Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth. And the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Ye have lived in pleasure on the earth, and been wanton. Ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. Ye have condemned and killed the just, and he doth not resist you. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. Grudge not one against another, brethren, lest ye be condemned. Behold, the judge standeth before the door. Take my brethren the prophets, who have spoken in the name of the Lord, for an example of suffering, affliction, and of patience. Behold, we count them happy which endure. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. But above all things, my brethren, swear not, neither by heaven, neither by the earth, neither by any other oath. But let your yea be yea, and your nay, nay, lest ye fall into condemnation. Is any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Is any merry? Let him sing psalms. Is any sick among you? Let him call for the elders of the church, and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and the Lord shall raise him up. And if he have committed sins, they shall be forgiven him. Confess your faults one to another, and pray one for another, that ye may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Elijah was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. And he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth brought forth her fruit. Brethren, if any of you do err from the truth, and one convert him, let him know that he which converteth the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death, and shall hide a multitude of sins.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Divine Program of the World's History by Albert Close. We're our book reading that Jörg Glismann and I are doing in this most wonderful little book from Protestant Great Britain, written just at the close of World War I. And we're dealing with the second portion of the book. Past the page 70 in the first portion. We're on page 7, I believe, of the book, and in the PDF, Jörg knows the number. Jörg, can you help me out with that?
Yeah, in the PDF it is, as you can see, page 47. I think it is page 7 in the book. On the second part of the book where we are at. Yeah,
and yesterday we were approaching the subject of this Origin and help me out, Jörg. What was the other name?
Origin and Constantine.
Yeah. Yes. And you found a wonderful paper, and we're going to read that today, aren't we?
Yeah, because it bothered me that yesterday I was speaking about Origin, and I said that he was a quote-unquote church father, very often cited, but he has a lot of wrong teaching, wrong doctrine in him. And then I saw that the next one that we are going to was Constantine, And of course, we spoke about in the past about the donation of Constantine, how that is forgerized. But also it deals with that Constantine, or more or less it deals with the question, was Constantine a Christian or was he a pagan until the end of his life? And there are numerous sources that tell you that he was not a Christian. I mean, of course he could have never been a Christian. First and for all, if anything, he could have become a Catholic and not a Christian, but he didn't even become a Catholic. He stayed a pagan sun worshipper all his life, and we are going into that subject today. So without any further ado, if it's all right with you, Bret, I would really like to start that.
Please, let's go right into it.
So we started reading here immediately after the vision in chapter 15 of the Revelation comes the chapter dealing with the vials of wrath or retribution for these papal persecutions. And then it starts in 296 with the Origenist controversy, and we are going to read a little bit deeper on Origen later on today, I can promise you, because I prepared a paper for that. Beginning of divisions of the Christian Church. We spoke about that yesterday. New early theologies. We spoke about that in the last broadcast. Then we went on to 300 AD. Porphyry, the pagan writer, first attacks the authenticity of the Book of Daniel and attributes its origin to BC 164 instead of BC 600. We spoke about that yesterday. And then we come to the next point, which is 312 AD, the conversion of the Roman Emperor Constantine. Now it is of course interesting to learn, did he really convert to Christianity? So there are so many papers out there on the internet, I can tell you, that you can look up, and so many books, so many writers, prolific writers who have written about this. Like, for example, Ralph Woodrow wrote about it in his book Babylon Mystery Religion. Dave Hunt wrote in his book about A Woman Rides the Beast. He wrote about it. Alexander Hislop wrote about it in The Two Babylons. But instead of always citing the same books, I was just looking on the internet if I could find some interesting articles on the subject. And I also wanted, of course, deal with Helena, who is the mother of Constantine, because she, so-called, went out to, find the real cross of Jesus Christ and brought pieces of that wood back to Constantinople to her son. And we are going to deal with that also a little bit. So why are we doing this? Well, because we are here looking at the foundations of the Roman Catholic Church in the beginning of the 4th century. We are looking at the time when a decree by Constantine, so-called, made Christianity the state religion of the Roman Empire. Now, first and for all, that means that a temporal ruler, as an emperor, as Constantine was, mingles in with church affairs or with religious affairs, and you have, of course, a mix-up of church and state. Something that is religiously, when you consider the Bible, completely forbidden. Church and state have nothing to do with each other. And we know from history past that every time you mix church and state, you get trouble. You get really in trouble. And you guys over there in America, you will see in a few years what I'm talking about today in 2019. Mark my words. But this is something all through history. And many people say, yeah, okay, Constantine by that became a Christian. First and for all, as I said, he could only become a Catholic. He could not become a Christian. Yeah? Because an emperor, someone who is high up in the power of the military and of the state executive as a ruler, cannot be a Christian. If you don't understand that, then I advise you to go to Tapasausi's book Rulers of Evil and read that. At least read the last few chapters, especially chapter 25, the two ministries, and you will understand how that is not possible. You will read from the quote from Novak, who is cited in the book Rulers of Evil, that the United States of America actually was founded for the only people that it needed to be founded for, namely sinners. Okay? I'm quoting of my memory, so this is not verbatim, but look it up in the book Rulers of Evil. You can look that up there. Now the question is, and this is why we are going to read this paper: was the Emperor Constantine a true Christian, or was he a sacred pagan? The problem is, of course, when we read through this paper, that you will understand with true Christian, the author of this paper means Catholic. Okay? And even though a Catholic is not a Christian, he still makes a distinction between a Catholic and a pagan, where there actually is no difference. So the question is actually, did Constantine become a Catholic, or did he stay a pagan as he was from the birth of his life? Constantine the Great is known in history as the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity. Why? Because he had a vision. In this picture you see Constantine's quote-unquote vision of the cross. Yeah? It was at the Milvian Bridge when he was conquering his enemies and when he was making himself emperor, that he had this vision of the cross in the sky, and together with that cross came the words in hoc signo vinces, means in this sign conquer, and he takes it as a sign from Jesus Christ. Now I ask you, before we even read any further, how can you even in the slightest form accept that Jesus Christ tells you to conquer in this sign? First and for all, you have to go into the history of the cross. The cross is not a Christian symbol. The cross is an old, ancient, even sun-worshipping Babylonian symbol. Yeah, it resembles the letter T from Tammuz, who is the reborn sun god Nimrod. Yeah, by his mother Semiramis. Now, that's a long story. Well, go into Alexander Hislop's The Two Babylons, or go into Ralph Woodrow's Babylon Mystery Religion, the original version from 1966, and learn more about this. Any person who calls himself a Christian, who calls himself a Bible believer, who calls himself a Jesus follower, and believes this stupidity that there is a cross in the sky and the words in this sign conquer, and this comes from Jesus Christ, has not understood the very first word of the Bible he ever read. Okay? People like those I cannot help. So the vision of the cross maybe was a vision like, of course, you had in 1917 the appearances of quote-unquote the Virgin Mary in Fatima, yeah, where she left interesting messages for the future. This is why we see Russia today as the axis of evil, or as the empire of evil, all through these last years. Yeah, that has all to do with the Fatima apparition in 1917. Maybe this Constantine's vision of the cross was the same. That was just a show the fallen angels, the helpers of Satan on this earth, set up to convince Constantine of him. And of course they helped him, because Constantine is a forerunner to put the Pope into power, and the Pope is the one who took the offer that Satan did to Jesus Christ in Matthew 4 and in Luke 4. When Jesus Christ was tempted in the wilderness for 40 days, and the devil came there and put him up on a high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and said, if you fall down and worship me in all this, I'm going to give you, because I can give that to you. And Jesus Christ said, get hence me, Satan. It is written, you should only worship your God and Father who is in heaven. Something in this regard. Jesus Christ answered, responded. And Constantine was the way paver. Can you say that? He was paving the way.
Paperweight, yeah.
Yeah, he was paving the way.
Oh, paver. Oh,
yeah,
yes.
He was paving the way for the coming Antichrist, for the future Antichrist. And that is the one who took the offer of Satan. Yeah? And therefore, of course, Constantine was conquering, because it says in hoc signo vinces, in this sign conquer. Conquer what? Conquer everything that is not yours. Conquer all the kingdoms of the world. And I will give all the kingdoms of the world to the one who bows down and worships me. That's what Satan promised, and that's what Satan did. Jesus Christ didn't do it, but the Pope did. And later on, of course, you understand that the Pope is one person with the Emperor. Yeah? He is the temporal Caesar, and he is the spiritual leader of the Roman Catholic Church. He is also a combination of state and church. That's why he has the title Pontifex Maximus. It really is not that complicated if you at least know true history. So, was the Emperor Constantine a true Christian, or was he a secret pagan? I can give you the answer before I read all this stuff. He never ever was a Christian. He maybe was a first Catholic, but still he held to all his pagan practices. And that means that he even was not 100% a true, quote-unquote, Roman Catholic. Anyway, however, it says here, legends and archaeological evidence suggest a different story. It seems that Constantine had a secret about his faith which was hidden for centuries. Constantine built many churches. He celebrated the faith in one Christian God and his son Jesus by creating many of the greatest churches of the world, including St. Peter's in Rome, the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, the Eleona on the Mount of Olives, and the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, and others. Yeah? This is a picture that is shown here where the Hagia Sophia is erected. This is, I think, even to today, the biggest Islamic mosque that we have, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Constantine became emperor in 306 AD and ruled for 31 years. According to tradition, just before the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in Rome in 312, he experienced the vision of a flaming cross with the inscription, "In this sign conquer." Not in his sign, in this sign it must be. In hoc signo vinces. As this is why the picture is here. As the legends say, he understood it as a sign from the Christian God asking him to convert. Yeah. I think the only time the quote-unquote Christian God asks someone to convert was when Paul met Jesus Christ on the road to Damascus when he still was Saul. And he was not asked to convert, he was convinced to convert by being put in...
I got a comment.
Yeah, because he made him blind for 3 days and 3 nights. Yeah, and he didn't eat and all that stuff. But please, Bret.
Yeah, that's true. It's very true. And also, I would think when I hear convert, you can convert to idolatry too.
Yeah, even though he was an idolater already. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's already an idolater, but what is your idol? Is it the sun god, or is it, self?
Yeah.
I mean, you can convert to the sun god, and I think that's what he did. But
he was a sun worshipper all his life. That's something that we read later in that article.
Yeah. We'll keep going.
Okay. So, and you have to understand, in 3012 AD, that is a very interesting time because you had the time between 303 and 313 AD, which are the 10 days of tribulation that Jesus Christ spoke about in the book of Revelation in chapter 2. It is very interesting there that he mentions these 10 days, and of course, because the book of Revelation is a prophetic book, 10 days are to be understood as 10 years. And those are the years from 303 through 313. Let me just see if I can find that fast here. Here in verse 10 it says, "Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried. And ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life." This is Jesus Christ speaking in the 2nd chapter of the book of Revelation. And the 10 days of tribulation that he refers to, and that you can do your own studies if you don't believe me, is the time between 303 and 313. That was the time of the greatest persecution of real Bible-believing, Jesus-following Christians in history so far at that time. Yeah? And 3012 is right at the end of that. And then all of a sudden he gets a sign from the quote-unquote God of Christianity to convert and conquer in his name. I don't think so. Jesus Christ would never ask anybody to conquer anything for him because Jesus Christ owns it all anyway. Yeah? He doesn't need a mere man to conquer anything for him. Huh? He's the creator of it all. I mean, how ridiculous is that? You know?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, in this sign conquer, as the legends say, he understood it as a sign from the Christian God, asking him to convert. Of course, we understand that this Christian God here is actually the God of Roman Catholicism. Huh? So that always you have to bear in mind when we read this. Constantine believed that he would be awarded with unusual power, the support of a deity and the greatest kingdom of the world if he followed through with the vision. By the decree of Constantine, Christianity became the official religion in Rome in 324. You know the decree of Constantine in 321 when he changed the Sabbath day or the day of godly worship from Saturday Sabbath to Sunday in 321. In 324 Christianity became the official religion in Rome, and in 325 we have the Council of Nicaea, where we have the Nicene Creed from. However, did he really become a true Christian, or was he just seeking the support of powerful bishops for political purpose? Powerful bishops? What's a powerful bishop? What do we call him today, Brett?
Cardinal?
Pope.
Oh, Pope. Yeah, well, right. College of Cardinals. Yeah. I don't know. There's all this hierarchical stuff, you know. I was just thinking one level above a bishop, right?
Yeah, that's right. But
that's all I'm still waking up over here, man. The Pope is at the top. Absolutely right.
At that time, it was still the title as it is today, the Bishop of Bishops, and that's the Pope.
Or the Jesuit General, yeah.
Now that's again.
That's another thing, yeah.
That's another thing, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So, but let's read on here. The Christian Emperor of Rome. In the group of his closest advisors there were bishops such as Hosius, Lactantius, and Eusebius of Caesarea. Eusebius of Caesarea. He is one that we will look at a little bit later also, because he did something very interesting for Constantine which we just cannot go over. He appointed the group of converted Christians to high positions in many parts of his empire. The Christian ministers had special privileges. He also extended many benefits to pagan priests who became Christian ministers. For example, they received monetary support from the empire and didn't pay taxes. That's something. That's a tradition they kept until today, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now this is a picture of Eusebius, and as I told you, we are going into Eusebius a little bit later. Very important person, very important man to speak about here. The bishops were a faithful army for the ruler, but apart from creating some laws, temples, and supporting the growing group of priests, Constantine didn't appear to be much of a Christian. He agreed with the bishops' suggestions to legislate against magic and private divination. But if a change in these kinds of laws was not put forth by an influential bishop, Constantine wasn't interested in making the changes. With his decree, many pagan temples were destroyed. For example, he ordered the damage of the temple of Aphrodite in Lebanon, but also many other ceremonial pagan places. It seems that he was interested in destroying some of the important places of pre-Christian cults, but at the same time, destruction didn't apply to all of them. And even though you have to understand that it was stated earlier in this article that he built many churches. Where did he build the churches on? On the same places where he tore down pagan temples and pagan Christian cultic places. Because all churches, especially in the East and also here in Europe, are often built on earlier pagan, ritualistic, cultic places and temples. The Pantheon in Rome, for example, was made a church, not by Constantine, but by a later emperor. And what is the Pantheon?
Is that right?
Yeah, and what is the Pantheon in Rome? The Pantheon in Rome actually is nothing else but a pagan temple. Pantheon. I have some pictures here. I think it was it's 500 or something that they did that. Here's the Roman Pantheon. And that was dedicated as a church, because they took all the pagan gods and idols and everything out of there. For example, the statue of Jupiter, which then they put in St. Peter's Basilica, where it still stands today. But of course it doesn't stand there as Jupiter, it stands there as St. Peter. Okay? And then they made this a church. A Roman emperor did that, I don't know, in the 5th or 6th century, I think that is.
Is the Pantheon really that old, Jörg?
Yeah.
Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah. It is a little bit more than 2,000 years old today, I think. Yeah. It really is that old. Yeah. Anyway, in every decision to destroy a pagan temple, it was written that the place could not exist because it was a site of misguided rites and ceremonies, a place of true obstinacy. He never outright banned pagan rituals like sacrifices, but only closed and destroyed important temples when the bishops felt the sites were dangerous to their own faith. Apart from his political motives to support the growing army of priests, Constantine may have had a secret. What is more interesting is that it seems that the Bishop of Rome knew about it and supported him in his hidden aspect of this life. The truth was that Constantine outwardly supported the new religion, but still worshipped the sun and pagan symbols. A Christian who worshipped the sun? A Catholic always worships the sun, but he is not told that. Constantine grew up in the court of the Emperor Constantine Chlorus, who was a Neoplatonist and a devotee of the unconquered sun. His mother, Empress Helena, a very important person who we'll learn a little bit later on, was a Christian who traveled through the Middle East searching for the key sites connected to Jesus. That's what we're going to talk about in a minute. According to the ancient texts, she was the one who identified the most important places known in the Bible. Young Constantine didn't appear as a follower of his mother's religious interests. He worshipped the sun, or was devoted to Mithraism, which is actually the same. And this is a picture of Constantine on the right and his mother Helena on the left. After his official conversion to Christianity in 312 AD, Constantine built his triumphal arch in Rome. It is interesting that it wasn't dedicated to the symbols of Christianity, but to the unconquered sun. During his reign, he changed many aspects connected with pagan cults, but that doesn't mean that he stopped the cultivation of old traditions. He often named them differently, but still allowed for pagan practices in many ways. For example, in 321 Constantine legislated that the celebration of the Day of the Sun should be a state holiday, a day off for everybody, instead of the Sabbath Saturday. Okay? The mysterious column of Constantine, this one that we are looking at, okay? We'll have a look directly in a moment when I'm there. In 330 AD, Constantine set up a statue which is a key to understanding his private beliefs. After decades of supporting Christianity, he appeared as a statue of the sun god in the Forum. The column became the center of the Forum of Constantine, nowadays known as Semberlites Square in Istanbul. Today, the column is 35 meters or about 115 feet tall, but in ancient times it was 50 feet taller, which is 15 meters, so that means about 50 meters and about 165 feet, and ended with an impressive statue of the emperor. The column was decorated with pagan symbolism supported by some Christian decoration. This is what it looks now, and this is what it looked in the time then, because we are going to learn about this on top. The statue on the top of the monument presented Constantine in the figure of Apollo, with a sun crown. You see? This is. Can you see that? Right?
Sure can.
Yeah,
Yep.
Possible. Okay. So The statue on the top of the monument presented Constantine in the figure of Apollo with a sun crown. What is that? That is deification. That is an
You know what?
apotheosis.
We have something like that here in New York City.
Yeah?
Remember?
No?
Yeah. The Statue of Liberty.
Oh, yeah, but that's Semiramis, huh?
Yeah, but sun crown?
Yeah.
It's vaguely the same thing.
Yeah. The problem is the Statue of Liberty is not the sun god Apollo.
Oh, no, of course. I'm not saying it's not the same, but I mean, there are similarities.
Yes, of course. These symbols always come back and forth and always are the same, always repeating itself.
Mm-hmm.
But the Statue of Liberty actually is quote-unquote Columbia, is the goddess of freedom,
Right.
is Semiramis, Ishtar, and,
Right.
you know,
Right.
also many different names, always for the same stuff. Yeah, she has a little crown of a halo, like Apollo has here, of Constantine, who represents Apollo. But we have to understand that when Constantine presents Apollo with a sun crown, that is a deification of Constantine. And that is what you call an apotheosis. That is like what you have in the in the capital of the United States of America. You have that mural. You have the mural on the top. The deification of George Washington.
Yeah.
An apotheosis. George Washington is made a sun king in that time, as Constantine here is made the sun god Apollo. Yeah, it's actually the same thing. So. The statue on top of the monument presented Constantine in the figure of Apollo with a sun crown, the greatest symbol of the kings from the times of Alexander the Great. Because there is nothing greater but the sun, right?
Right.
In their understanding. It is said that he carried a fragment of the true cross in his hand, a relic of the cross of Jesus. That's, by the way, something his mother brought to him. At the foot of the column was a sacred place with contained relics, including other parts of crosses, a basket from the biblical story of the loaves and fish miracle, a jar which belonged to Mary Magdalene, and a wooden statue of Pallas Athena from Troy. The Byzantine Emperor Manuel I Komnenos, who lived between 1143 and 1180, saw this monument as too pagan, and he decided to place a cross in place of the statue on top of the column. The monument was damaged a few times in history, but the column has survived until modern times. Parts of the statue of Constantine are located in a museum, but the column of Constantine is still one of the most important examples of Roman art in Turkey, which today is of course an Islamic country. Here you have the picture again. Pagan, Christian, or a god? What was Constantine? After his death in 337 AD, Constantine became one of the pagan gods. An analysis of archaeological sites suggests that Constantine, like previous emperors of Rome, had never stopped seeing himself as a son of the ancient deities. It is hard to believe that Constantine's Christian beliefs were as strong as his mother Helena's. He appears more as an intelligent politician than a man who truly wanted to Christianize the world. Here is a bust of the Roman Emperor Constantine. Now, I took this from this source, as you can see, but now we are going to read a little bit about, it says here, the mother of Constantine found the real cross of Christ, and the Bishop of Rome at the time, Eusebius, provided Constantine with corrupt Bibles. I told you, keep in mind about Eusebius and his mother Helena. We will go there in a minute. Just there's another article on was Constantine a Christian emperor, and we are just read this a little bit before we go into the other tasks that I started. Here it goes about origin. That is something we close with. So another article on Constantine. Constantine became emperor of Rome in 312 AD after the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, where he had the vision of in this sign.
In hoc signo vinces.
In hoc signo vinces, in this sign conquer. Yeah. A little later, he supposedly embraced the Christian faith. Supposedly, that's already much better wording than in the other article. For himself and for his empire, in an attempt to bring about the amalgamation of paganism and Christianity. Now, what is the amalgamation of paganism and Christianity?
Oh, mixing the holy with the profane.
Exactly, Bret. Thank you very much. And those are the words that our God uses in the Bible, that we should not mix the holy with the profane, and the amalgamation between paganism and Christianity is just about that. That is putting the mantle of Christianity over a pagan religion, and by that kidnapping Christianity and paganizing it. You are either paganizing Christianity or you are Christianizing paganism. Both is an amalgamation and a mixing of the holy and the profane.
Yeah.
And
the leaven of the Pharisees.
Yeah, and the result of that, Bret, is Roman Catholicism, as we have.
That's
today.
right.
Yeah?
That's right.
In 331 AD, Emperor Constantine ordered that an ecumenical Bible be written. Constantine wanted a Bible which would be acceptable to pagans as well as Christians. That is only possible when you do compromise. But the true word of God, the truth, does not compromise. And Eusebius, the bishop of Caesarea and follower of Origen, he was a follower of Origen, that's why we close with Origen, was assigned to direct his task. Eusebius rejected the deity of Christ and claimed that Christ was a created being. This error, called the Arian heresy, is taught by the Roman Catholic Church. You want proof? The Pope has declared the Vulgate as the infallible Bible, and the Vulgate is Arian, since it removes the deity of Christ. In any event, Eusebius, being a devout student of Origen's work, gladly obliged Emperor Constantine's request and sent him manuscripts filled with Alexandrian corruption. There were about 50 copies of this Bible made by Eusebius, and they ended up in Rome and Alexandria, where there was a very large occult presence. Since the attacks on the Word of God had originated in Alexandria, with the deceitful work of such pagan Greek scholars as Origen and Clement of Alexandria, it was only fitting for some of Constantine's Bibles to end up there. Now it gets really interesting. Both admirers and enemies of the Codices Vaticanus and Sinaiticus readily admit that these two codices are remarkably similar, so similar as to compel one to believe that they were of common origin. Dr. Gregory, a recent scholar in the field of manuscripts, believes that the Vatican and the Sinai manuscripts, so the Vaticanus, Codex Vaticanus, and Codex Sinaiticus manuscripts, are two of Constantine's 50 Bibles. He states, quote, "This manuscript," speaking of Vaticanus, "is supposed, as we have seen, to have come from the same place as the Sinaitic manuscript. I have said that these two show connections with each other, and that they would sit very well as a pair of the 50 manuscripts written at Caesarea for Constantine the Great." Also, in his introduction to textual criticism of the New Testament, Dr. A.T. Robertson states, quote, "Constantine himself ordered 50 Greek Bibles from Eusebius, Bishop of Caesarea, for the churches of Constantinople. It is quite possible that Aleph and B, so A and B, meaning Sinaiticus and Vaticanus, are two of these 50. Unquote. But please remember, the early Christians rejected these manuscripts. So they went into secret libraries, and there they lay, until they were later dug up as ancient manuscripts. Ever heard of Tischendorf?
Mm-hmm.
Ever heard of how he dug out of a garbage basket in a monastery the scripts of which are the Nestle-Aland texts made that we have today? The modern Bible critical texts that are based on Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus? That's what he speaks of here. until they were later dig up. That was 1844. Interesting year.
Oh boy.
So here's what likely happened.
Yeah.
The corrupt Alexandrian text, also called the Egyptian or Hezekiah type text, found its way into Constantine's Bible via Origen and Eusebius, one of which was the Vatican manuscript and another of which was the Sinai manuscript, but they were rejected and thrown in the closet by Christians of that day. However, after hundreds of years they eventually were revived via the Westcott and Hort Greek text and finally crept into the new Bible versions in your local Christian bookstore. The devil is sneaky, isn't he? Therefore, when you hear or read of someone quote-unquote correcting the King James Bible with older or more authoritative manuscripts, you are simply hearing someone trying to use a corrupted, pagan, Gnostic, ecumenical, Roman Catholic text to overthrow the God-honored text of the Protestant Reformation and the Great Revivals. And before we go into Origen and continue this little excerpt of the text, I really want to go into this little article here. This is of Helena, yeah? Speaking of the mother of Constantine now. I didn't put that in the article here. I thought we can read that online also because it's quite a long one. It has about 10 pages, I think, so I don't even know if we finish this today. Or would you rather go into this now, or would you rather read the rest of the PDF and go into Origen here, what we just read? Brett, what's your preference?
Oh boy, well, if you suggest we should go into this, I think it's a good idea. Let's just go right ahead.
Yeah, but also we can go into this because we are just here dealing with the Bible. Let's go first into this and then deal with with his mother. So the question is, who was Origen? Adamantius Origen, who lived between 184 and 254 AD, was born in Alexandria in Egypt and was one of the most famous quote-unquote church fathers. Was instrumental in editing manuscripts, upon which the New International Version, the NASB, that is the New American, I don't know.
Standard Bible.
Standard Bible, thank you.
That's a guess.
And all modern versions are based. He attended the School of Alexandria, so he was a Gnostic, which was a theological school and was established in the 2nd century after Christ. This school mixed Greek philosophy, or Gnostic beliefs, secret mystical occult knowledge with biblical teaching. The same as the Jews did in their Babylonian Talmud. Okay? Origen taught many non-Christian doctrines, which we will see below. He stated that he would not hand down Christian teachings pure and unmixed, but rather closed with the precepts of pagan philosophy. Adam Clarke says Origen was the first quote-unquote Christian teacher of purgatory. A pupil of the Gnostic star worshipper Clement of Alexandria, Origen lightly esteemed the Bible's historical basis. The scriptures, Origen maintained, are of little use to those who understand them as they are written. He is known for the Old Testament 6-column Bible called the Hexapla, in which each column had a different version of the Bible. Origen was well known for his labor to produce a so-called correct text of the Greek New Testament. He was known for spiritualizing or turning biblical events into allegories. Origen greatly influenced Eusebius, who produced 50 copies of an ecumenical Bible at the behest of Emperor Constantine. So we get confirmation in this article of what I just read to you before in the other article. Eusebius was sent by Constantine to get him Bibles because he wanted an ecumenical Bible. And what do we mean with an ecumenical Bible? We mean a Bible that is acceptable for pagans on the one hand and for quote-unquote Christians on the other hand. That's why you have all the corrupted Bibles today.
talk about being double-minded, Jörg.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What does the Bible say? Keep your eyes single, doesn't it?
hmm The point is, when you study this kind of history, Bret, it all is all of a sudden so clear, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
It all falls into logic all of a sudden. Yeah?
The fog lifts away eventually.
Yeah. He was known for spiritualizing or turning biblical events into allegories. Origen greatly influenced Eusebius, who produced 50 copies of an ecumenical Bible at the behest of Emperor Constantine. Although Constantine is remembered for establishing Sunday worship and the Christian saying Catholic Church, thank you, this is the real expression,
There it
as
is.
the state religion, his action in choosing Eusebius's rendition of Origen's Bible was perhaps more important, since all modern versions of the Bible are based on the Codex Vaticanus and the Codex Sinaiticus, which are of the Eusebio-Origen type. Many authorities believe they were actually 2 of the 50 Constantine Bibles. Now, what did Origen believe? And by that is what you have to understand. When you quote-unquote write a Bible, God wrote the Bible. He used men influenced by the Holy Spirit to put it into words for us. But this Origen made up his own Bible. And when you make up your own Bible, you will always have an influence of that what you believe. And we just learned that he was a pagan and that he mixed spiritual meanings and that he mixed biblical events into allegories, and that he was not a Bible believer. So what did he believe? And that is of course what you read in his Bible, when you read a Bible that is based on his texts. Origen believed that man was divine. Revelation 3:22. Genesis 3:22. Remember?
Oh boy. Yeah.
The promise of the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
That's right.
You will be as gods. Origen believed that man was divine. Origen believed in the pre-existence of souls. He taught that everyone, including the devil, would eventually be saved. He described the Trinity as a hierarchy, not as an equality of Father, Son, and Spirit. That is a very important sentence, because everywhere in this world where you go and you read about the Trinity, it's always hierarchically, and not an equality of Father, Son, and Spirit. One God. He believed in baptismal regeneration. He believed in purgatory. He taught that the Holy Spirit was the first creature made by God. Where is that in the Bible? He believed Christ was created. Whereas John says in his Gospel, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And nothing was made that was not made by him. Right?
Right.
He taught transmigration. This is the belief that at death the soul passes into another body. He denied a literal interpretation of the Genesis creation, taught that it was a myth, and taught that there was no actual person named Adam. He taught that Christ became God at his baptism. He taught, based on Matthew chapter 19, that a true man of God should be castrated, which he did to himself. He denied the physical resurrection of believers. Jack Moorman, author of the book Forever Settled, writes, quote, Origen is considered by many to be the most profound mind in the history of the Church. But in fact, it may be said that he had a greater corrupting influence on the early Church and on the Bible itself than any other man. Unquote. According to Les Garrett in his book, Which Bible Can We Trust? Quote, Origen, being the textual critic, is supposed to have corrected numerous portions of the sacred manuscripts. Evidence to the contrary shows that he changed them to agree with his human philosophy of mystical and allegorical ideas. Thus, through deceptive scholarship of this kind, certain manuscripts became corrupt. And this is the website I took this article from. Now, we have learned so far that in the divine program of the world's history in 312, the author Albert Close tells us that the Roman Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity. And we have just analyzed that and understood that there was no such thing as a conversion of the pagan Roman emperor into what we understand as true biblical Christianity. That's not true. And I think we established that by reading these little papers that we did. We understood that Constantine asked Eusebius, who was the bishop at that time, to get him some Bibles, 50. He wanted to have 50 Bibles to put in all the churches that were there. And they had to be ecumenical Bibles so that they were acceptable as to pagans as to Christians. And Eusebius got these, and these Bibles are based on the writings of Origen, who we just learned who he was. So, with everything that we have just learned so far, how can you say the Roman Catholic Church is Christianity? You can't. Huh? And I hope that this little excursion from the book, The Divine Program of the World's History, was interesting enough for you, and I'm going to continue now reading the article of Helena, the mother of Constantine. Try to get through the paper without too many comments, so in that case we can probably even finish this reading today, I think. Do you have any suggestions?
Oh no, I'm
comments?
soaking this up like a sponge. Keep going.
Okay, just had to take a sip of water.
Good. Yeah, please do.
Okay, Saint Helena, discoverer of the true cross between 250 and 330 AD. Helena, later known as Flavia Julia Helena Augusta, mother of Constantine the Great, was credited after her death, with having discovered the fragments of the cross and the tomb in which Jesus was buried at Golgotha. Helena was born at Depranum in Bithynia, later renamed after her Helentolis, about the year 250 AD. Of humble origin, Helena was employed as a stabularia, which might be rendered a barmaid or the like. She became the wife or perhaps the concubine of a soldier of Balkan origin named Flavius Constantius, to whom she bore one child, a son named Constantinus, on February 27th, probably in the year 272, at Naissus, which is today Nis. Constantinus became an officer and then governor of Dalmatia, before being appointed Praetorian prefect by the Emperor Maximian in about AD 289. On March 1st, 293, Constantius was raised to the rank of Caesar, i.e. deputy emperor, and was obliged to divorce or set aside Helena in order to marry Maximian's daughter Theodora. Thereafter, Helena disappears from view for many years. She reappears after Constantine had become emperor in the west and had taken control of Rome. There she was presented with the Caesareum, an imperial palace outside the city walls. She devoted some attention to this building, having its bath restored and lavish scale and giving it a new water supply with its own aqueduct, subsequently named Aqua Augustia. Constantine's biographer, Bishop Eusebius of Caesarea, who we know now, reports that she was converted to Christianity by her son. How can she be converted to Christianity by her son when her son stays a pagan sun worshipper all his life? Okay? She received the title Most Noble Lady, Noblissima Femina, at latest in AD 318, and coins with her name and this title. And her portrait were struck in modest quantities. Shortly after Constantine gained control of the whole empire in AD 324, Helena, together with Constantine's wife Fausta, were raised to the rank of Augusta. She took the imperial names Flavia, generally abbreviated F1, and Julia. Inscriptions from the bases of statues in her honor call her Our Lady Flavia Augusta Helena, or Our Lady FL, not F1, FL Julia Helena, Most Pious Augusta, and coins bearing her name and portrait were now issued in greater quantities. It is no doubt significant that on one inscription set up by a high official, Helena is explicitly described as, quote, most chaste wife of the late Emperor Constantius, Divi Constati Castissimae Convigi, as if to dispel rumors that she had only been Constantius' concubine. It is likewise surely no coincidence that Constantine included women who worked in taverns among those protected by his stern anti-adultery legislation. In other words, his mother may have been only a stubularia, but the profession was not to be treated as effectively equivalent to prostitution. In AD 326, Constantine's eldest son, and only child by his first wife Minervina, Crispus, who had already been raised to the rank of Caesar, was suddenly sentenced to death by Constantine and executed at Pola in Istria. The real reason for Crispus' condemnation will no doubt never be known. Sources hostile to Constantine claim that his stepmother Fausta had fallen in love, and that when Crispus repulsed her advances she accused him of attempted rape. This version is doubtless invented, for the simple reason that Crispus had been in the west, at Trier in Germany, while Fausta was with Constantine in the east, so in Constantinople in modern-day Turkey. However, Fausta may well have played a part in turning Constantine against her stepson in the interests of her own sons. Hence, it is no surprise that when Constantine arrived in Rome 10 days after Crispus' death on July 15, 326, to celebrate the 20th anniversary of his first assumption of the purple, Helena intervened. She appeared before Constantine dressing in mourning clothes and either revealed to him facts that he did not know, or at any rate planted the seeds of suspicion against Fausta. Shortly afterwards, Fausta was suffocated in the steam room of the palace baths, having evidently decided on suicide. Helena now had no rival as the first lady of the empire. Constantine would soon rename her birthplace Drepanum after her, and another Helenopolis was created in Palestine. Indeed, shortly after these violent deaths in the imperial family, Helena set out on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Her prayers at the holy places were publicly presented in the version of Eusebius as an act of thanksgiving for the triumph of the Christian empire, for so great a son, the emperor, and his most pious sons, the Caesars Constantine II and Constantius II, St. Ambrose would later call her journey the pilgrimage of an anxious mother. Traveling via Syria, she came to see for herself the churches which Constantine had ordered to be built in Jerusalem, and to pray there for her son. Faust's mother, Eutropia, also found her way to Jerusalem, but there is no indication that the two traveled together. The whole imperial court had returned to the east by spring of AD 327, and Helena's journey probably began in that year, no light undertaking for a woman in her late 70s, of course. Her journey was very much a royal passage. The cities through which she traveled benefited from her largesse, as did the soldiers. Besides this, she exhibited specifically Christian beneficence, providing money and housing for the poor, releasing prisoners and restoring exiles. Even in the smallest towns she did not overlook the churches. Eusebius states, probably. However, it seems that she was in some ways snubbed at the great metropolis of Antioch by its bishop, Eustathius, who perhaps disparaged her lowly origins. The real problem was doubtless a matter of theology. Helena particularly venerated the memory of Lucian, a priest of Antioch martyred at Nicomedia in AD 312. Lucian had been the teacher of Arius, whose doctrines had already begun to create discord with the church. Arianism. With the church, and the Council of Nicaea in 325 had not really resolved. Eustathius was an uncompromising upholder of orthodoxy who had banished those in his clergy suspected of Arianism. Eusebius of Caesarea, who probably met Helena during her stay in Palestine, was, by contrast, an admirer of Arius. We know that already, because that's also the influence in the Bibles. He stresses Helena's piety, her frequent attendance at church, and above all her endowment and rich adornment of churches. Constantine's church-building program included Mamre, where God had appeared to Abraham, Bethlehem and Jerusalem, and outside Palestine, the places where the early martyrs were revered. The founding of the church at Mamre is associated with Constantine's mother-in-law Eutropia. Helena played a significant role in building the churches at Bethlehem and on the Mount of Olives, which Constantine personally dedicated a few years later to honor the memory of his mother. Eusebius reports that Jesus' birthplace was adorned by the pious empress with wonderful monuments, as she adorned the holy grotto there in manifold fashion. Something wrong with our connection, Bret? I think that Bret is gone, right? Aye, we got a bad connection here. I'm very sorry to learn that. That is a displeasant interruption of the reading, of course. But since Bret cannot follow, I'll probably hang up and we'll call him back instantly. Let's see if we can call him back and get him back on the line here. No. That's some technical issue that we have here today. I'm very sorry, but that is something that can happen on these live broadcasts, of course. So, since I cannot make a reconnection with Brother Bret, I will leave it over here, and we'll continue reading this next time, and then we will probably also come to the point where we understand and learn how Helena, the mother of Constantine, found, quote-unquote found, pieces of the cross of Jesus Christ. Just the point that we were reading right now about the grotto is something that makes me shiver already, because, Jesus Christ was not born in a grotto. Jesus Christ was born in a stable, as it is reported, and not in a grotto, which is a cave. So let's go back into this little paper next time, when we come back to our next reading in the book of Albert Close that was written and published in 1916, the Divine Program for the World's History. And of course, after this little article of Helena, that we get a very good understanding of who Constantine was, what his relation with his mother Helena was, what she did, and how the connection was to the Bishop Eusebius and the quote-unquote Church Father Origen, we have established today. And we are going to continue this little article on Helena next time, and then we'll return to the book of Albert Close. For today, I'm sorry that we have had these technical problems, and I hope we will pick it up next time with Bret in another reading, and until then, read your Bible. Maranatha.
From whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence even of your lusts that war in your members? Ye lust and have not, ye kill and desire to have and cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not because ye ask not. Ye ask and receive not because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lusts. Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. Do ye think that the Scripture saith in vain, the Spirit that dwelleth in us lusteth to envy? But he giveth more grace. Wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Be afflicted, and mourn, and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning, and your joy to heaviness. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Speak not evil one of another, brethren. He that speaketh evil of his brother, and judgeth his brother, speaketh evil of the law, and judgeth the law. But if thou judge the law, thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is one lawgiver who is able to save and to destroy. Who art thou that judgest another? Go to now, ye that say today or tomorrow, we will go into such a city, and continue there a year, and buy, and sell, and get gain. Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor, that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away. For that ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. But now ye rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is evil. Therefore to him that knoweth to do good, and doeth it not, to him it is sin. Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire.